Have you ever wondered why keep self-sabotaging? Well, in this video, I'm going to be covering these hidden voices, and this is going another layer down than we normally do. Have you ever wondered why you sabotage yourself? What if there was a manipulative voice inside your head that was causing you to self-sabotage without you even knowing it? That's what we're going to be exploring today. So I'm Jared, former binge eating wrestler turned Zen monk. And today we're going to be exploring how you can deal with these manipulative voices, how you can identify them, and ultimately stop the roots of self sabotage so that you can stop binging, so that you can actually have sustainable, healthy eating habits. And we're going to be examining and exploring this through the story of Wormtongue. And when I grew up, I loved Lord of the Rings. My dad read it to me as a kid, and in the second book, The Two Towers, there's an old king, and he has a manipulative servant, Wormtongue. And Wormtongue, very appropriate that he's manipulative. His name is Wormtongue. He whispers in the king's ear, and he uses his voice to make the king weak. Now, in the movie, there's a powerful scene where Gandalf comes in and he basically makes the king see the light of day and to see how this manipulative worm tongue figure is ruining the kingdom and causing the kingdom to go in disarray. And it's a movie, so it's instant, right? The king actually becomes younger and you know more lively. And in real life, we do things gradually, but I think this metaphor holds true that there's a manipulative voice, and we need to shine the light, right? Gandalf kind of represents light and awareness and spirit. We need to take that spirit, shine it on that voice so that we can be free. And it's very important to see that these restrictive voices, they might sound good. They might sound good initially, right? Worm tongue. Sound good initially. You know, these diet voices, they might be things that you've thought for years. On the top on the right, you see that there's a thought: one peanut is enough to sustain you for an entire night of studying. Now, there's nothing malicious about this voice. It's almost like it's caring for you. It's almost, it doesn't seem like outrageously terrible, right? So these can be very, very tough to spot. And this is why this video is an in-depth video and it's really for intermediate students, all right? So this is where you've already been tracking your food intake, you've already been tracking your thoughts and emotions related to eating, okay? This is subtle stuff. I do not recommend you starting out with this, okay? But this is for a little bit more nuanced training for intermediate people who kind of jumped in the water a bit. And so, if you are just a beginner, it's very important that you start off, understanding this food restriction cycle. And we'll come back to this image in a little bit, but you need to see when you're tracking your food habits that these bad voices that cause you to binge, the anxiety, the pressure that gets built up, the conflict that happens in your head. This is where you start, okay? The bad voices are where you start, okay? The bad voices in Lord of the Rings, they're ogres. They're very easy to spot, all right? So again, this is where you start as a beginner, but these good voices, they're more quiet, all right? So, if you're catching a bad voice, you just journal before you eat in a nutshell. And the bad voice happens right before you are binging. It's the anxiety, it's the pressure, it's that voice. So this is where you're at as a beginner. But as you continue to study your eating habits and practice journaling and going through this process of feeling and noticing and stuff, and noticing your triggers and your cues and everything like this, these are all concepts that I've covered a lot on this channel, so I'm kind of skimming by them. But these are the concepts you got to get down as a beginner. Um, you know, so um, but but anyways, as you practice this, you'll start reducing your binges, but you won't quite be able to get over the hump, right? And so, with this deeper psychological insight, you'll see why the bad voice continues to beat you. And this is like the scene from The Lord of the Rings, where it's a very bad picture, I understand. But on the bottom right, there's Boromir. He's killed everyone. He's exhausted himself, and the orc is about to kill him. And this is what it's like sometimes when you're just starting to binge, you're starting to fight back against the binges. You'll have journaled your feelings. You'll have dialogued with the inner child. You'll have sat with them, and it'll be too painful. You'll be too exhausted, too depleted, um, to fight, and you'll. It's like you just get shot down. And so this is where we really start looking at what what are the conditions, what leads up to the bad voice winning. And one of the conditions you very will spot right away is that if you are starving or lightheaded, if you're hungry, irritable, you're going to binge. If you get too hungry or too depleted, you won't be able to resist binging. That's a very powerful insight as a beginner, right? And so this is really a paradigm shift. Instead of trying to stop binging willpower, you stop yourself from being so depleted, from getting so hungry, right? This is a very powerful insight, but right, very powerful insight. That's what eating alignment is all about. You see very clearly that it might seem like skipping meals is the best way to cut calories, but if you get too hungry, you're gonna end up snacking and binging, right? And so you start trying to prevent hunger, you start trying to prevent depletion. But here's the thing. Here's where this comes in, this good manipulative voice. You know that you shouldn't deprive yourself. You know that you shouldn't skip meals. You know that you shouldn't allow hunger, but you do. So what's up with that? And this is where the hidden Wormtongue voice is. And so this good voice, right? Putting good in parentheses because it's not good, but it might sound good. And this happens at the restriction part. So this is hard to spot because with a binge, you can feel it coming and you can do this journaling process. But this good voice is usually when it's calm. It's after a binge and you're starting to like amp yourself up again. So here's an example of the good voice. Be productive. Usually this good voice might be stern. Be productive, work hard, stick to the meal plan. It sounds good. Doesn't that sound good? Right? It's good, right? But this restrictive voice, it might sound like it has your best interest at heart, right? It might sound like this has too many calories, or you can only have one bite, or it might sound good, but it's manipulative and it's depleting you. Like this thing over here is this voice. I only want what's best for you. I want you to be skinny. I want you to be I want you to be happy. Then don't eat anything. It's manipulative. It's freaking manipulative. And so we want our authentic voice. It's not the good voice, it's not the bad voice, it's our voice. And if you are following this good voice, this worm tongue voice, how this will be is this is when the meal plan, eating healthy, becomes a chore. It's because you're being manipulated. Just have one peanut, just be productive. That is not connected to your emotional needs. You're going to lose motivation. Eventually, you're going to binge. And the fear, oftentimes, this voice is operating out of fear of weight gain. All right. So this good voice is terribly afraid of weight gain. It's trying to prevent that. In some ways, it's trying to keep you safe. Don't get me wrong. This good voice is sort of trying to keep you safe. It's just not very skillful. And so this type of thinking, this manipulative voice, it tends to think in two perfectionistic terms, simplistic, perfectionistic. It's all right or all wrong. You only have one peanut. You gotta have this. You gotta do that. It's very like strict. And so it leaves you depleted. Here are some thoughts that you might have. In particular, um, what's the point? I can't eat that. These are signs that this worm tongue voice is here. And so let's go through some ways that you can overcome restrictive thoughts. This is very similar to how you catch bad thoughts before a binge. And I'm saying bad because I don't know, good or bad, you know, whatever. It's all relative. But anyways, um, so these are going to sound familiar, but it's applied at a different stage in the binge cycle. So here are the 5 steps. Identify the voice, notice what it's saying to you, consider how this voice makes you feel, challenge your thoughts with facts, emotional conversation. Let's go through these. Identify the voice. You first got to notice the voice when it is telling you to restrict, noticing that it's telling you to work, 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 or noticing that it's telling you to not eat this, not eat that, not eat this, not eat that. I'm not saying that you need to like go out and like eat donuts because the voice is telling you to not eat donuts, but I'm saying we got to be aware of it. You got to be identify the voice. Okay? So this is where you write out, this voice. There's this voice in your head that you got to be perfect. You got to write that out. Write out that voice. Notice the tone of the voice. Sometimes people are just writing down the thoughts, and that's good. That's a great first step. I'll oftentimes work with people on their thoughts, but eventually you go down a little bit. We got to make it personal. We got to put characters, right? We gotta symbolize it. And so, noticing the tone of the thoughts, making characters, and seeing really very deeply how the good voice leaves you depleted, leaves you hungry, and then it sets you up for the bad voice to win. All right. So it's like the good voice seems like it's an angel, right? But it's still giving you bad advice. Scratch on the door. Don't eat this. Work on it sounds good, but it's not. It's a worm tongue. And so you really got to consider how this voice makes you feel. Is it making you feel depleted? Is it making you feel bad? You know? And then we challenge it with thoughts and um, oftentimes this voice is too simplistic, right? It's mean, it's stern, it sounds like it's has the best thing out for you, but you know, um, like for example, for that peanut thing, what would a friend say about this thought that you should only have one peanut to study the whole night? What would a friend say about that, right? Or have you studied on one peanut before and what happened? You got to challenge these thoughts. You got to notice how they're making you feel. And then we having a conversation about this, right? This is a weird thing where you're actually having a conversation with yourself, with the brain. So you can imagine this, like the brain. Let's worry about the past or stress about the future, and she is talking back to her brain, or or not. And the brain is saying something, and I'll ask people to write this stuff out. Um, so these are kind of how you start to go beyond the meal plan. This is how you go into your psychology, how you work with the thoughts on a logical level, on an emotional level, and how you kind of work through this stuff. So those are the 5 steps again. And we'll just wrap up this video. Let me know if you have any questions. If you liked it, please, please, please like the video. It helps it spread far and wide. If you want more information, you can go to eatingenlightenment.com. So thanks again. Hope you enjoyed the video. And as usual, namaste.